Hello. In the previous video, you listened to an expert interview about capturing waste heat to create energy. In this language focus video, we are going to look at modal verbs. Modal verbs include words like can, should, might, and several more. Using modal verbs help you describe how you feel about a situation in a more precise way. Modal verbs can be used in different ways. In this video, we will look at the modals we use to make a suggestion. We'll talk about the structure of modal verbs and the meaning of different types of modals. Then, we'll look at some examples. In order to talk about modals, the very first thing you need to do is define verb. A verb is a word that tells an action or a state of being in a sentence. Run, walk, think, and be are all verbs. Now we can define modal. A modal is a special type of verb, usually used with another verb that describes ideas, such as making a suggestion, giving advice, or talking about the probability, the chance of something happening. We're going to look at modals for making a suggestion in 4 modal verbs in particular: should, can and might, and must. First, let's look at the grammar for 4 modal verbs, and then we'll talk about the differences between these 4. The grammar for most modals is quite simple. Use only one modal and put the modal in front of the verb in a sentence. Let's see an example. In the previous video, you listened to an expert talking about capturing extra heat and using it as energy. In the sentence, you capture extra heat for energy, we should first identify the verb. Did you find it? It's capture. Now, we just need to put our modal right in front of the verb. Let's try could for suggestion. And remember, we can add only one modal. That gets us the sentence, you could capture waste heat for energy. Because we've added a modal for suggestion, could, the sentence now means that we are making a suggestion. The person we are talking to could follow our suggestion, or they could not. Let's look at another example. The government builds some wind farms. Can you find the verb? That's right, it's builds. Now let's imagine that we are answering the question, what can the government do? With a suggestion. The government might build some wind farms. Notice that the S from builds has gone. When we use a modal verb, we use the base form of the verb, build in this case. Okay, so now we know the structure of using modal verbs. Let's look at the different modals we can use. When you're making a suggestion, you can use different modal verbs. Use must, should, shouldn't, could or might, depending on how strong your suggestion is. For example, if you want to make a strong suggestion, then use should. Countries should reduce the amount of carbon emissions. In this case, we are making a strong suggestion. We have included must in this video, even though must is not really a suggestion. It is an obligation, something that you have to do. However, because climate change is such an important subject, many people use must when they are making a suggestion about what to do. You must take action to stop climate change now. Sometimes we are not so certain about our suggestion. In these cases, we use a weaker suggestion, like could or might. You could open more recycling sites. You might start composting at home. We can also use should to make negative suggestions. These are also strong suggestions, but we use should not or must not to tell people not to do something. For example, you shouldn't invest more money in fossil fuels. So in this video, we looked at the modals we use to make a suggestion. We talked about the structure of modal verbs, and then the meaning of different types of modals, followed by some examples.